Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Libertarian Book Club. Today I'm sitting down with my friend Anya Leigh, and while this is a Libertarian Book Club, today's book is more religious. So if you're into that, feel free to skip, but I think there's something here for everyone, especially if you're a parent or you're young and just starting your college life and your adult life and you're hearing new ideas. So please sit back and enjoy as I present to you Anya and her book, Connor's Call. Who wrote this amazing book, Connor's Call. He is a young author. How old are you, Anya? 19?
20.
20 years old and published how many books?
4 at the moment.
4 books at 20. That's an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So this is a spoiler filled podcast. This is a book club, not a book review. So if you want to know what happens, read it and come back to us. So Anya, if you want to, just go over a quick synopsis of what the book was about, and I'll jump in and ask you a few questions along the way.
Awesome, thanks. So the book follows 2 best friends, Connor and Alex, and they're 2 freshmen, fresh-faced Pentecostal Christians, and they're moving from Florida to Oregon to pursue their university education. And they're very naive, very innocent young boys, and they're coming into this Northwestern environment, and they're encountering a lot of things that they've never thought about before, or at least have thought about but not done in practice. For example, they're encountering other religions, people have very different mindsets, other Christians who think a lot differently from them. And they kind of find out a lot about each other that they didn't know, like how they would react in these particular situations. And they both kind of have to grow their faith in a different way than they originally thought that they would have to. Yeah. That's a synopsis, but I'm sure you have particular points that you want to discuss. But
I do, but to begin with, I want
to. After the usual coming of age books are all high school, like if you go to what's the one, The Perks of Being a Wallflower,
Juno,
or even The Gift, very dystopian environment, but it is coming of age, like they're all high school based, but they kind of assume that after you finish high school then you're an adult, but it's very different. Like you have so much formation that occurs after that point, and if you play it right, you keep forming your entire life. So I'd really love to see more coming of age novels that occur after the usual 18-year-old period. But yeah, that was the idea, to do a sort of coming of age novel for those 4 years of university that many people have. Yeah.
No, yeah, I've always said this. You're not an adult until you can go to a bar. You know, people say you're an adult at 18. It's like you can't do anything at 18. You can go join the military. That's about it. You're not an adult yet.
You can get married, but that's...
you can get married. Yay!
What are you going to do with that? You don't know how to be married.
Who's going to get married at 18? That's not going to last. I mean, if it happened to you, I'm sure it'll last. Congratulations. Good luck on it. But given the numbers...
don't do it.
Stick it out. Wait. Date a few years, see how it goes. You know, you might have some terrible habits. You need to find out. To begin with, I want to ask a few questions about more of the writing process. You know, you're a young author. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
So what was the inspiration for the book? What really made you want to write it?
So I met this newish kind of friend that was a different person than I had met before. Like they were still Christian, but they were very worldly in the sense that they knew a lot about other religions, a lot about history, a lot about other cultures, as well as had a lot of stuff happen in their own family. And just we met about every Wednesday for an hour, and I would just hear his stories, hear about people that he knew about, hear about other religions, and it was just a lot to take in. And so come summer, the pandemic all happened. But come that point, I was kind of overwhelmed just by all that I had learned, like in pieces but hadn't fully processed. And it was just kind of that process of coming of age where I was like, what am I going to do with all of this that I know about? Like, how would I actually react if I was in this situation? And so I just started writing out this story about two boys and how they would react in those situations. Because, like he's into learning about Mormons, for example. He's into learning about the Mormon faith a bit. And so I would learn all these like bits and pieces about Joseph Smith, and I was just like, okay,
that crack.
How would I actually react if I ran into a Mormon? Like, I don't even know. Like,
well, has someone who has new family members who are Mormon, the best reaction you can have is laughter, because some of the things they say, I love my Mormon cousins, they're great, and they say some things, I'm like, this is family, don't make fun. This is family, don't make fun. Indeed. But there's a lot there of Joseph Smith where you could just and
if you look into the deep history, like there's such a rich culture there, like it's no wonder that he's gained such a following. But no, but I'll dive into that a bit more, because there's a side character named Emma, and she's a Mormon. And it was quite interesting to write her and have her be a recurring character, because a lot of them, they just meet them once and that's about it. Like, their encounter with Buddhism is just a one-time meeting. Like, I didn't know as much about it. But Emma, she's this recurring character. And it was interesting to write this character that was, like, she's very kind. She's very passionate about her faith. She's, like, very, very much wanting to learn more about the world and, like, deepen her experience like the boys are. And she was very similar to them in many respects. And it like brought that realization that even though all of these different worldviews that I was learning about were very different from my own, there are real people that are within them that are just as anxious to know more and to be better versions of themselves. So writing the book kind of like, it didn't let me discount them as just like an ideology. Like, they're real behind every ideology. That was
a good point.
The motivation behind writing it.
So, research-wise, how much did you dive into each ideology? Like, did you talk to your friends? Did you research a lot? Which ones did you research more than the other ones?
Lord, I researched so much for this project. So I'll go over organizations so that you can, and I'll take you through that process a bit. So the book is divided into 4 main sections for the years, and then there's kind of like short stories about 2 or 3 pages each for some of the months during the years, and they just like pull out those meaningful conversations that the boys have. But each of them kind of develops another ideology or religion or worldview that I learned about. And so, like, in like one, there's like a certain denomination of Christianity, in another, they meet a Mormon, in another, they meet a lesbian, in another, they do this, and another, they do this. So it just kind of goes through the different ideologies, kind of methodically. But for each one, I would go into like deep research. So I would spend like at least a week just doing like reading and watching videos and taking notes before I would even sit down to write the section, because I wanted it to be as real of a picture of that person that it could be, which is very interesting. Like, and there's a lot that I don't even remember from the research process that I ended up writing down, just because it was like I learned it, I wrote it, and then I was at peace with it in a sense. So there was a lot of research. Like, I have a giant document of notes and links that I can always go back to. But yeah, a lot of research for this one. It was very different from my young adult novels, which were just mostly from my high school experience. And this one's meant to be very informed. But yeah.
I don't want anybody listening to this get the wrong idea. Right, this is a novel written by a Christian, and it has heavy Christian themes. It is not your God's Not Dead Christian novel.
Which, if you read my other novels, they are very much God's Not Dead. So I've been there, and I didn't want this to be that kind of story.
There were some mature themes, not too mature.
Yeah.
PG. If it was a movie, it'd be PG-13.
It would. It would. hands
And
down,
that's what it should be.
like hands down, I love animation. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of art. And I was just like, man, as much as I love animation, as much as I would love my stories to be animated in film, I don't think I could have this particular story be animated just because, like, I don't think it should be portrayed in film just because, like, I had to be real. I had to be authentic to how they would really react in these situations. And I believe that's what would happen. So
Absolutely. And it wouldn't be too hard to, it's more or less all in one setting. You know, all you would need is a
yeah.
few roads, a gas station, and a nice Honda. And well, not a nice Honda, but a Honda. You know, it's
Okay, well, I'll let you in on a little secret. In earlier, so you see on the cover of the book, I've got my copy right here. There's the Honda Civic that they're in the entire time, but there's a little baby Dorito by the front right tire. Yeah, so in earlier drafts of the book, it was narrated by a Dorito that was stuck between the car cushions. And like there were a lot of like just italics that were their thoughts, so the Dorito was responding to everything as well as Connor and Alex. But like in the end you kind of get to it, and if it's like all correct and the Dorito is the one portraying it, then it's Jainism that is the correct thing for the universe. So there's like there were meant to be like a lot of layers of like there's these Christian guys that are your main characters, but in the context of the story they're wrong. So there was a lot there, but yeah. There was a point. I had a point that I was going with this, and now I forget the question.
all good. Out of all the research you did on what you remember that you did, what was your favorite tidbit? Are you kind of like, oh, that's neat. I didn't know that about them. What was your thing that popped out that kind of stuck with you?
Well, I love the Mormons. I love their creation story and how all their different civilizations that they write about down in South America. But my favorite tidbit is a very stupid tidbit, but no. Continuing on with the Mormons, like they used to be called Mormons, but now they prefer to be called the Church of the Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
Right. But I have a recurring joke in the book where the guys will be like, she's a Mormon, and she'll just say through gritted teeth, she's like, Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, and she's very annoyed by it. But no, I think that's my favorite tidbit because I didn't realize that we had so many of their churches around my town because I hadn't realized they had changed the name. But no, I think that would be my favorite tidbit just because it showed up so many times in the book.
I noticed that there was a few. I would say of all the reoccurring characters, she was the interesting one.
I know. Yeah. If
no,
I wrote,
go ahead.
No, if I wrote a sequel to this book, it would probably feature her, and her continuing development after the events of this story. But
I'd read it. I'd be interested.
It hasn't been put on my heart to do that, so I'm not going to try to push something out that shouldn't or is ready to exist or shouldn't at all. I think it stands very strongly on its own. So
it's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I read it all today.
Oh, nice.
I was very busy this week, and I was like, I need to read this book soon. I said I had the whole week to read it, and I put it all the way off to an hour, 2 hours beforehand, and I was like,
it's not meant to be too long. It's not meant to take a long time.
No, 180 pages?
180 pages. It's about 40,000 words long, so a solid novella.
Not too bad. It's very easy read, very breezy. It's a book that a parent can read and kind of get an idea of what the kid's headspace might be, but also a book a parent. I mean, I was thinking, if I ever have kids, this is a book I want to hand to my son who goes to college. You know, this is a book people should read. A senior year, go into college, kind of get do's and don'ts, ideas, kind of like, it's easy read. It's very breezy, is how I would describe it.
Thank you. I take that as high praise.
One of the things I did like about it was kind of some of the stress aspect. One of the characters seems more stressed out about things. He seemed more, I don't know how to put it.
Alex, you're talking.
Alex,
about?
Yeah, Alex. He seemed a little stressed throughout, and that's when I noticed that a lot with a lot of the people who are born and raised Christians. They get a lot of well, I call it Catholic guilt because I'm Catholic, but it's just like they know what they're supposed to do, and they've been told their whole life to do it. So when they don't do it, it's just like, hey, I've been told 20-something years how to do it.
Yeah,
It kind of hits them a little harder. So that's just something that
it
a lot of
does.
people need to know about. I think that parents, I think, should know more about what's their kids. Like, hey, you've instilled these great values in them their whole life. So when they do miss it, because everyone misses it, they're gonna take it harder because they know better. And they
Yeah.
do know better, but it hits them harder.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the things, because the characters do certain things and say certain things in the book, and like, as like someone who's brought up Christian their entire life, and like you said, been told not to do this and to do this and things, and if you break those rules, it's such a hard blow, especially if it's one of those things that you told yourself your entire life, this will never happen to me, I would never do that, I've been brought up right, so I am exempt from this particular thing. A mild example that doesn't really show up in the book, but a lot of girls are like strictly Christian girls are like, hey, don't kiss at all. Like, have your first kiss at the altar, which is a wonderful sentiment, and I love it. Like, it's not found in the Bible, but it's a wonderful sentiment. But then you put that such pressure on them, and then if they do, that's not even a sin, and if they break it, they're heartbroken, and it's just so difficult. So even, and with the things that are sins, there's that double guilt, because you know you shouldn't have done it, and you feel like you've betrayed your family and your upbringing, and it's so difficult. Like, I've learned a lot about parenting from writing this book, just for how you should approach them going into the world with that. But yeah, I totally agree on that. But Alex, yes, he's very high strung. He's very passionate about not changing, but
Reminds me of
and
your
then
brother a little bit.
yeah, and in the end, he's supposed to change in a better way. You do have to change, you must, but like, you don't have to compromise your ideals in order to change and adapt to the world. So yeah, don't rewrite the morality book, but also don't hate people.
On that
So,
exact topic, I want to cut to page 94.
oh,
There's a
cool.
little paragraph here that I read. I'm like, this is a good point. I want to bring it up. Do
Okay,
you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
you go ahead and read it.
Okay. I can't remember who said this. Maybe you have to remind me who said it if you can figure it out. Page 94. Let's assume different people can do different things. Like, for preference, not morals. One group believes technology is bad, so they don't use it. But that shouldn't impact another group. He turns his head, sour cream dripping from his cheek. You don't think it's wise to purchase Supreme tacos on a college budget. Do you think that works for romance?
Mm-hmm.
This is a point that I think a lot of Catholics have, that Catholics have a view of sin where there are some things that could be. I'll use alcohol as an example.
Okay.
For Catholics, alcohol is not a sin when taken in moderation. When it's if you have one drink or two drinks, it's fine. The moment you have your reason impaired, when it becomes a sin.
Yeah.
For other denominations, for example, Baptist, just touching it's a sin.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really
Looking
does
at
come
it,
down to it really does. Of course, if you have a drink with a Baptist, that gets you. They
Mm-hmm.
go hard. So it really is a point. I think more people need to understand that. Aristotle had a point about the golden mean between temperance and overindulgence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more people need to adopt that, because it's never all or nothing is easy. Finding your golden mean and knowing what you can handle, what you can't handle, is something that's a part of maturing and growing up. That people need to, some people sit and go in the bar because they have no willpower. Some people can be in the bar and be fine. Some guys can have one drink and walk out and have no problem. But everyone needs to figure out what their golden mean is. And I think that was brought up very well. Of course, that doesn't go with everything, Some things are just intrinsically bad, intrinsically immoral, but there are gray areas. I don't want to say gray areas. There are substances or activities that could be fine when taken in moderation. And that's something I think you did a good job of mentioning in the book.
Yeah, well, yeah, so you're familiar with Aristotle, and I know that well, I mean, of course, everyone's explored this in some manner, shape, or form, but I think Jordan Peterson has done it a lot. Well, just explaining the like intrinsic morality, and like ignoring it isn't a good thing. But then like there's intrinsic morality of like don't kill someone, and then there's the kind of extrinsic thing of, hey, you shouldn't drink. But yeah, a lot of that philosophy. I unfortunately didn't study a lot of Greek philosophy growing up. I'm still meaning to get around to it. But that kind of um, idea was around St. Paul's idea of like everything is permissible, not everything is beneficial.
Oh, I like that. Well, I need to write that down.
St. Paul talks a lot about, those differences and those boundaries far more eloquently than I could. But yeah, I know that that particular section on page 94 is wrapping up Alex discussing like the boundaries of kissing, because they have two very worldly friends that kiss incessantly all the time, and he's like, is this okay? And eventually they apply it to drinking, and they eventually apply it to marijuana, and you're like, is this an intrinsic thing or is it an extrinsic thing? And if it's an extrinsic thing, where do I stand on it? So I hope I explored that boundary, but I'm glad you brought up that paragraph right there.
It's a very good paragraph. On real quick on Greek philosophy, everyone who's anyone who is all an intellectual anything needs to read Plato's Symposium, which is an entire Socratic on love. I recommend everyone reads that. And the I call it Nicodemus Ethics, but I'm actually not sure how you properly say that word.
That's all
by
right.
Aristotle. And if you read Aristotle and love him, you got to read Aquinas, the Catholic philosopher. Everything Aquinas did was perfect.
Yeah.
I have a few of his books, and on my shopping list is the Summa Theologica. I love Aquinas. My church is St. Thomas Aquinas' church at Bartow. So everything that Aquinas said was right on the money. Can't recommend him enough to people.
Exactly. I have some trouble understanding his theologies, but also I'm getting through a much larger book list for senior year. But he is definitely, one of my revered theologians.
No, he was great. Let's see if I have any other questions. Oh, I wanted to ask you, what was the publishing process? Did you self-publish, or do you have a publisher? What was it like to go through that?
Yeah, well, let me back up and talk about the other books I've written. So I started writing a young adult novel series. A few that are out right now are Princess Charming and Royal Ambassador. I'll have King's Son out before August. But they're all self-published on Amazon through Kindle Direct Publishing. And they let you publish paperbacks and Kindles for free. You still have to purchase them after you've published them, but there's no upfront cost. So I appreciate it. But all the books that I published are through Amazon. I wasn't looking for like fame and fortune right now. Like with the young adult series I just mentioned, I was kind of figuring out how to format books, how to edit, how to write, how to publish them myself. I work with an illustrator, things like that. Like I was figuring out that beginning process that a lot of people do at the very start, but I didn't care to like learn how to be a novelist and how to write while rejected by a bunch of publishing companies. That didn't appeal to me. So right now I'm working on projects that I believe will be the first that I'll take to publishing companies, because they're the quality that I think could be published, whereas my first two here were a little poor. But Connor's Car is kind of the one that I wish I would have taken to a publisher, but also published through Amazon. But that's the first one also that I formatted myself. I just kind of wrote it and I was ready to be done with it, and I was like, okay, we'll just put it on Amazon, we'll publish it. I don't really care who reads it, because this was more for me to come to terms with all that I've been learning, not really for anyone to thing. So I'm glad that people have still been able to enjoy it and learn from it, and also be comforted by it. So yeah,
that's something that you brought up earlier. I do something similar when I have an ideal or something I'm trying to work out. I write it out in a Socratic, or I write it out in a essay. I mean, it'd be amazing about docs I have on my computer for unrelated nonsense.
Yeah, so I've got like 8 handwritten journals so far. On top of like my diaries, as well as all of these books. So I totally get it. Yeah.
No, it's a very helpful tool for anyone who's watching this and trying to really get your ideas out there. Writing them down is way better than just speaking to yourself in the car.
Exactly.
You really go back and edit it and we figure it out, and who knows? If you ever think something's good enough, there's so many self-publishing article websites. I mean, I got a couple articles published myself. You can go and read. They're not super great, but the ideas that are being put out there, and that's very important for people figuring things out.
Indeed.
Okay, well, I think I'm out of questions. Let's go into the more of a pushback section.
All right.
Push back on a little bit here. So, on the marijuana point in the book, it seemed, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it seemed to begin with more anti-weed from the character perspective. Now, I understand the characters are new, kind of sheltered to the new to the world kind of thing, and so that might have been just the common reaction. But towards the end, I never noticed it. I can't remember if I noticed it not later in the book, but towards the end of the book, how do you think your characters will respond to marijuana themselves? Would they be take part? How would you put if they were in that situation? Would they zone in?
They would not. Yeah.
So for you now, does weed fall into the same category of temperance when it comes to alcohol, or does weed take into a different category?
That is a point that I don't think I have enough information on. Like, I studied the effects of it. I studied different levels of things. The character who does smoke marijuana quite a bit, Warren, he has a very lighthearted reaction. Like, he turns into almost a kinder person when he smokes, which is odd because you kind of hate him as a character whenever he's not smoking. So
I know some people like that. You just be like, hey man, what's it at? You need some of this right now.
Well, it's kind of an awful thing, and that's where, like with alcohol, I can say it very strongly that, like, obviously, if you're an alcoholic and you have a problem and you know you can't handle it, then you shouldn't walk into a bar. And like, I know I have a problem with like even like general stuff now, like watching too much TV. Like, I get pulled in and I don't stop. So I know if I touched alcohol, I would react in the same way. So I know where I stand on that. I know it would be the same way for any kind of drug. So I'm definitely not going to. But then it kind of comes back that now that I'm meeting more people, and like once you put a face with an ideology, suddenly it's a lot harder to differentiate with it. So like if you say, hey, do you think people should be smoking marijuana? I'd be like, no, I don't think that they should. It messes with your brain, especially like underage kids, but anyone like messes with your brain. But when you put a person before me, I'm like, like still no, but I would respond to it in a much different fashion, which is what I think the boys end up going through. They step into the environment and they're like, no and no, but then it turns into no and, well, I will treat that person accordingly when I know them. So yeah, that's a really sticky one though.
For me, I think marijuana falls into it can be used medicinally and it can be used in a relaxation sense, but it can also be such a powerful drug it turns into a psychedelic.
Yeah.
And at what point does a psychedelic become a reason corruptor versus a perception changer? Some people can smoke weed and see things from new angles, and it can be beneficial. Some people can smoke it and awaken bacon and don't do anything with their life. And so really, I think weed does fall into the more individual category of people needing to know their limits and know themselves. But
yeah, here's another idea for that, which is explored not much in the book, but there's the verse in Proverbs 30 where the king's mother is like, it's not for kings to drink wine lest they forget the law and misstep. Like, leave that for the poor people who like need something to numb the pain or like aren't making mind-shattering decisions. So I think that would also apply to the extraordinary versus the ordinary category, like who's in power, who needs to be in control of their faculties, and like be that more than an upstanding moral person, be that almost like perfect person all the time. So like, teachers and leaders and people like that. So
on that point of king and layperson, there's a book you should read, Renegade History of the United States. Thaddeus Russell is a libertarian, also historian. The book kind of goes over how the lower class, the prostitutes, the thugs, the drug runners, they do things because they can get away with it, and then the rich class gets jealous and tries to justify and legalize it. And so it's how the real advancements of legalization in society have come from the renegade class.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting idea, historically speaking, and it's a fascinating read. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But we're coming up on the end of our time for the podcast. Let me ask you, Anya, what has been your favorite part of this interview?
Talking about Mormons, man. No.
Mormons.
Actually, I do have a favorite part, because it connected with something else. But I have a friend who has a daughter who's like 1 years old now. And she read my novels and stuff. And she lives like in the Panhandle, so we don't ever see each other. But she called me and she said, "Hey, I read your books." And I was like, "Oh, sorry," because I don't hold them in very high esteem. But she said, "Yeah, I'm going to give these to my daughter to read when she is older, like both the young adult novels and Connor's Car," because she was like, "This is important and it teaches things that need to be taught in a way that works." So my favorite part of this interview was when you said you would give this to your son when he was coming of age and going to college. That it really means a lot to me that this book will not only help the people who read it now, but people who have yet to be born. That's my favorite part.
Well, that is a good answer. Where can people find your books at? It's on Amazon, or do you have a website?
All on Amazon, yes, sir.
All on Amazon.
I'm in need of setting up an author's website that has the links to all the podcasts I've done and all the books I've written and articles and everything. So once I have that set up, I'll send you the link. And I don't know if you can update the podcast and like
I can do
put
that.
it in the script.
Well, I will put a link to your Amazon page in the description and on the website.
Thank you.
The book is Connor's Call by Anya Leigh. Anya, do you have a Facebook or Twitter page people can follow you at, or?
Nope.
Nope. Just out there.
I'm somewhere out there.
Over the rainbow.
Over the rainbow. That is indeed my selected character. No, but I'll have an author page that'll have blog posts and updates and all that. But I'll send you the link once that's.
Wonderful. Well, this has been the Libertarian Book Club with my guest, Anya Leigh. I hope everyone has a great night. Keep on reading.